So the Ring magazine have named Oleksandr Usyk as their pound for pound king after his victory over Anthony Joshua in their rematch. So if we scroll down here, we'll see the current Ring magazine top 10 pound for pound. Now, Tyson Fury obviously isn't included because he has officially retired, quote unquote. But number one, they've got Usyk. Second, Inoue. Third, Crawford. Fourth, Spence. Fifth, Canelo. Sixth, Lomachenko. Seventh, Bivol. And a lot of people are going to ask questions and say, why is Bivol lower than Canelo? But I guess, again, it's pound for pound. It's an abstract concept. It's not just your last fight, it's a body of work stretching back several years, right? As well as your current status. Anyway, eighth, Josh Taylor. Ninth, Jamel Charlo. And 10th, Beterbiev. So you can argue all day about who should be in which position and whether there are some people that shouldn't even be in the top 10 and perhaps people that aren't included who should be in the top 10. And this is the issue I've always had with pound for pound. This is why I don't tend to do pound for pound lists. Because how do you say that, let's say, Terence Crawford is better than Usyk or Usyk is better than Crawford? How do you quantify that? How do you actually assess that? How do you judge that? Is it based upon who you think would beat who if they were the same weight? Or if it's that, then how do you decide how tall one fighter is going to be versus the other? Let's say Canelo Alvarez was a heavyweight. How tall do you make him? How heavy do you make him? It's an abstract concept to the point where I don't even want to engage in it because there are far too many variables. You see? But I'm assuming the pound for pound top 10 is for Ring Magazine is just more based on what the fighter has done in their division, let's say over the past 2 years or whatever, or maybe the past year, over the past, let's say 3 or 4 fights. What have they done? And the merits of what they've done over the past 3 or 4 fights will give them a ranking in the top 10. But even with that, there are so many variables. How do you compare the opponents that Terence Crawford has been fighting to the opponents Usyk has been fighting? Usyk, of course, is a small heavyweight. So does he get extra points for the fact that he's fighting people that are like 23 pounds bigger than him? I'm assuming so. So that's my take on pound for pound. It's something I don't generally like to get involved in. But when it comes to the number one pound for pound, again, even that I don't really like to give my take on it in terms of picking a number one pound for pound. But I don't think Usyk is a ridiculous choice. That's what I'll say about that. It's not ridiculous to have Usyk number one pound for pound, given all he's achieved. He's unbeaten, undisputed cruiserweight champion, stepped up to heavyweight, beat AJ twice for the unified titles. So I don't think it's ridiculous to have him there. You guys let me know what you think in the comments below. And as far as this is something I can talk a bit more about. As far as the Ring Magazine top 10 heavyweights, their champion is Usyk. Number 2 is Anthony Joshua. Can't argue with that. If Tyson Fury is officially retired, I can't argue with it. And even if Fury was around still, not retired, I wouldn't argue with Usyk still being the number one. Or of course, he's the champion because Fury vacated the belt or was stripped of the belt, whatever it was. Maybe he was about to be stripped and he vacated before they could strip him. So I wouldn't have an issue with them ranking Usyk over Fury. Because you could certainly make an argument that Usyk beating AJ is a better win than Fury beating Wilder. You could definitely make that argument, a strong case that Usyk has the better win with regards to that. So, I think it's reasonable to put Usyk above Fury, but certainly at this stage, you'd have to put Fury above AJ if you want to do a rankings list. I'm not saying that Fury, in the long run, will prove himself to be the best heavyweight of this generation. That's yet to be determined. We have to see the undisputed fight to know, because unless we do, then it's all just opinions, and opinions are like, you know what. So, AJ, Wilder, does Wilder even deserve to be this high? based upon the inactivity, back-to-back knockout defeats. At least AJ was beaten on points. Wilder's been knocked out twice in a row, and he's been very inactive. So I'm not necessarily sure I'd put him as high as number 2, but it's, again, not ridiculous. 3 Parker, 4 Dillian Whyte. They're giving Dillian Whyte, I think, the benefit of the doubt based upon what he's done, beating Povetkin, Rivas, all these kind of guys. But after that knockout to Tyson Fury, and even the first knockout defeat to, or the knockout defeat to Povetkin, I'm not sure I'd have Dillian Whyte this high. In all honesty, I'm not sure I'd have him this high. I might have Filip Hrgović higher than Dillian Whyte at this stage in the Ring Magazine rankings. But it all depends on how far you want to go back. Do you want to credit a guy for something he did 5-6 years ago? How do you measure all this stuff? Is it based upon what he's done in the past 2 years or in his past 3 or 4 fights? Because, of course, there are fighters who had a Hall of Fame career and then they turned into basically journeymen, like Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones Jr. isn't going to get, a few years ago when he was still fighting, he's not going to get a top 5 ranking, is he, based upon what he did in the 90s? So there has to be a cutoff point whereby beyond a certain number of fights back, you're not really judging the guy's ranking on that. You're judging it on what he's done more recently. So does Dillian Whyte really deserve to be as high as number 4? Again, depends on how far you want to go back. Andy Ruiz, Luis Ortiz, Joe Joyce. I mean, how is Ortiz higher than Joe Joyce? How is Ortiz higher than Hrgović? How is Ortiz higher than Sanchez? Come on. Like, Joe Joyce beat Daniel Dubois, right? He beat Carlos Takam. Who's Luis Ortiz beat lately? Who has he ever beat? He beat Brian Jennings about 7 or 8 years ago. And other than that, he beat who? God, I'm struggling. Charles Martin in his last fight when he got dropped a bunch of times. That's it. Joe Joyce at least beat Daniel Dubois. At least beat Carlos Takam. How's Ortiz above him? I don't get that. Filip Hrgović, well, a lot of people debate whether he really beat Zhilei Zhang. I'm picking Zhilei Zhang over Charles Martin all day long at this stage. Somehow, Luis Ortiz is above Filip Hrgović. Frank Sanchez beat Efe Ajagba. Who would you guys pick between Ajagba and Charles Martin? I mean, it's debatable. I'm going to guess that a lot of people would pick Ajagba. But again, maybe it's debatable. So that's their Ring Magazine heavyweight top 10. And that's their pound for pound top 10. The story, of course, is they've got Oleksandr Usyk as their number 1. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you agree that Usyk is number 1 pound for pound? If not, then give your list. Again, I don't have a list. It's too abstract for me to get into pound for pound and how you assess it and all that kind of stuff. It's too abstract. If it's one division, like the heavyweight division, I can get into that a bit, but not the pound for pound stuff. I don't do that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And by the way, yes, I did notice that they misspelled Usyk's name, although at the end of the day, it's a different script, right, that they use in Ukraine. It's not even the script that we use. They've put an A at the beginning rather than an O. So I don't know whether it makes much difference. Maybe Usyk's first name is spelt with an A sometimes as well, rather than always just an O. Maybe it's a correction that people have yet to make. Maybe he prefer it to be spelled with an A rather than an O. But again, they use a different script anyway, so maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's irrelevant. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.